Welcome to another special episode of UX Boost Pills for those tuning into YouTube, and for our listeners tuning into UX Boost podcast, welcome as well. Today I'm joined by Tomaso, a senior UX researcher at Glovo, the on-demand courier service that purchases, picks up, and delivers products ordered through its mobile app. Thank you, Tomaso, for joining me. I'm so excited to get to know more about your background in communication psychology, how that relates to your UX work, and your experience working at Glovo. So on to my first question. How did you get into UX research, and how did you end up working at Glovo?
First of all, thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody. So my career started some 10 years ago when UX research was not still a big thing, meaning that there were not many university or academic paths to follow yet. So after my academic career in psychology, I started working in an internet company. That was the name back then, and started getting familiar with usability testing, and on one side and on the other side with agile project management. So the sprint way of working that now is following me through my career because I'm working in digital companies. And Sprint, Agile, Scrum. That first experience really gave me the base for what I'm trying to do right now. And after that, I had maybe the luckiest chance of my life of working at SR Labs. That is an Italian company that is specialized in eye tracking consultancy. So they really work everything around eye tracking, not just for UX, we would say, but marketing research, shopping experience, sport visual training. So I really had the chance to get some good experience with the eye tracking, the visual work. And that was actually what brought me to UX, because back when eDreams was looking for an eye tracking specialist for their UX research lab, there was not many profile around that could handle that methodology. And so actually that specific know-how was the thing that allows me to enter the UX world.
Great, thanks for sharing. Maybe it was a coincidence that it was called eDreams because it ended up being fulfillment of your dreams. That's awesome. So my next question would be, what is your favorite thing about your job as a UX researcher? And also, what kind of problems do you most enjoy solving?
Yeah, so I would say that user is my passion, and I think it's very common for people in UX. Basically, understanding their need, their pain points, what they're trying to achieve through the platform you're providing them or you're working for, and really being this bridge between the product and business need and what the final user want to achieve or is trying to do, is really what motivates me. And this is something that is very valuable in a company, okay? Nowadays, everyone is super driven by business, KPIs, delivering fast and as fast as possible. And I think designer, UX researcher, UX writer, many data analysts that I've known, we really try to push the balance back a bit as much as possible to the user need. And so this is the biggest challenge on one side and the most important mission for me as UX researcher.
Great, thanks. Very altruistic. Next question. What would you say is the most important thing when collaborating as a UX researcher with other roles in UX teams? For example, how do you complement UX designers, project managers, product owners, etc.?
I think that, so before getting to the most important thing, I would say the biggest challenge in my experience is the different paces that our job requires. So UX research can deliver to a certain speed. Designer has maybe a different kind of approach or need more or less time depending on the job. Product manager has a lot of pressure to deliver as many features and updates as possible. So I think that this is the biggest challenge, to coordinate, to create an environment where we can work in parallel, we can cooperate, and we can find a common rhythm. This is the thing that one of the things I'm always struggle the most in every company, but it's also a beautiful challenge to handle. And so one example on how I usually try to cooperate, for example, with designer is understanding that they need quick iteration, maybe testing small stuff while improving any product they're working on. And so I think that one of my responsibilities as UX researcher is evangelize them and train them in some research they can do on their own. Okay, if I cannot help them directly, I can help them run their own test, their own iteration. So we always have this kind of balance where research try to have a bigger scope project and very quick usability testing is done by, for example, designer. So in this case, we don't lose the UX research part in the product development cycle, but everyone can work at its own pace and coordinate better with the others.
Thank you. I guess your job is audience focused, but also another audience besides the consumer is also those teams that you work with that might not know how to do things that you can train them on. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Cool. So next question would be on the topic of research methods. I know it's hard to answer as it depends entirely on research objectives. However, could you advise our listeners on any best practices to determining the best research method to use for any given study?
Yes. So as you said, it's a very broad topic. What I would say is that pick a framework. Okay, pick some structure in your research plan definition. One example is, for example, the hypothesis framework. Okay, so from the problem statement or the business requirement or the product manager, the Jira ticket, generating hypothesis and research question that really focus down the problem to specific bits that you want to validate. Usually, in my experience, once you define a proper hypothesis, the method is there. Okay, so you understand more or less based on what you're trying to measure or to find out what is the best things to do. This is not always the case. Another things that we always try to follow in our team is we want to learn, and so we try any times possible to pick a new method, something we've never used. Of course, we're not playing, because it's not just for fun, so we cannot just pick things out of the blue because we like them. We try to give a structure out of it. But on one side, yes, pick a framework and allows the framework to guide you to the proper way of investigating, considering also business need, time, budget. Okay, also these things affect the method you can pick, and then maintain an open mind. So if you haven't tried a diary study, as soon as you can find a project that fits this kind of methodology, go for it, try it, and get some experience on it.
Thank you. From my time in UX as a content strategist, I've realized that when I first joined a year ago, UX research and UX design were very different to me. I thought all the creativity lied in the UX design portion, but UX research is also super creative. Like what you've just said to me requires a creative mind to be able to move along like with your task at hand and to perform the research to gain data for your customers or clients, but also at the same time develop new ways and better ways, methods.
Yeah, I agree. That and a lot of problem solving skills to be a UX researcher.
Right. Very cool. Thanks. And now onto the fun stuff. As a eye tracking specialist, could you tell us what in sum eye tracking is and why is that important?
Mm-hmm. So eye tracking is a very effective methodology because it's a direct measure of the attention distribution. Okay, so we know that in the digital world, apps, website, there are a lot of elements competing for the attention, and we always try to drive the user to certain flows, path, objectives, call to action, etc. Eye tracking through the detection of the visual movements allows us to see how the attention is distributed on any given stimulus. Okay, can be a real one like a shelf, or it can be a digital one like a web page. So I think that I don't know any other methodology that can, or tools or technologies that can provide us with such a precise measurement of this very important part of the user experience.
And another UX research method I'd like you to please explain more about is your user journey mapping. When would you use this method?
Yeah, so my experience using journey mapping journey mapping basically is the life cycle of your user. So the story of your user, why they are interacting with your product, service, platform, website. And in there, you have details about their needs and pain point, what they're trying to do, their channels, what they think, how they feel. So there are a lot of information from the user perspective when they are interacting with your product from an early stage when they don't know you or they still don't know they are a user of yours, till the moment possibly that they decide to churn, to drop off, to stop being a user. It's a very detailed methodology. It's a very detailed tool that allows you to think, to put yourself in the shoes of the user. So this is so valuable in companies like digital companies and startups to communicate with business people. Say, hey, there is the business need, but this is what our users feel and think. So what am I using it now for? At this moment, for example, is helping product team into brainstorming new solution or ideate new features or inform new roadmap based on the user, center on the user. So yeah, an example is of ideation technique we're using with journey mapping is using the information that we put there about needs, action, and pain point, and use technique like How Might We or Service Blueprint to then work with product manager, developers, and engineers to ideate solutions, okay? And this is always a challenge, right? Sometimes it's a trend to just start thinking about the solution without starting from the problem. I think those kind of framework, like journey mapping, helps you starting from a real problem, a user problem.
What it sounds like to me from our discussion so far is a lot of answers to the questions I've asked and a lot of our audience asked. How to get into UX, what's the best research method, what's the best this, what's the best that, it comes from experience. And in the end, if you really know what you're trying to solve, the question you're setting out to ask, and you know what the client needs, a lot of these things will become obvious.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not sure if obvious, but for sure experience is still one of the most important things as UX researcher. Again, I said there is not like 20 years of university path and formation you can get. It's starting in the last years. So yeah, I think that now experience, especially in how to translate research into a business environment, into a digital company, like a very company that is growing very fast, like Glovo, it's vital, super important.
Good point, thank you. That leads me to my next question that only someone working so many years in the field can answer. What has been one of your biggest challenges as a UX researcher?
You heard me mention business a lot in the past question, and I would say that this is the point. So the most challenging thing that I have to face day to day, day in and day out, is explaining what UX research is and why UX research is important. Not to everybody, thanks God, but there are still many profiles in a company that still don't understand exactly the value of talking with 10 users. Okay, so I think that but this is a beautiful challenge because I get to explain research and to making like engage new profile into UX research, and eventually almost everybody just understand the value and fall for it and just get in love with UX research. So I think that this is a big challenge for every UX research out there. Be patient, take your time, and evangelize the company, the people you work with. So don't think just about doing interviews and surveys, but create content that you can use to explain others what are you doing and what is the value that you're bringing to the table.
Thank you. Very holistic. That's awesome. So next question would be, you studied communication psychology, the science devoted to improving face-to-face communication. Can you tell us what the key ingredients are for good moderation of a session or interview?
Yes, yes. So this is really UX research one-to-one. So, I mean, we're talking about, on one side, not biasing. So try to be consistent in creating, but then also how you ask the question, how you interact with the user. Try not to be a variable. Try not to be the thing that changes the respondent reaction or perception or feeling during an interview. That doesn't mean be a robot, okay? Be mechanic, because there is also part of adapting your communication, your tone of voice and your communication style to the person you're interacting with. You also have to adapt your tone of voice and your style of communication with the people and the user you're interacting with. So I think that this is something that I've studied and I've practiced during the communication psychology university career. So it's funny to learn and challenging to learn. So that, yeah, I would say try to be consistent, try to not influence too much or not at all what users are saying and perceiving during the session, but also don't be a robot. Adapt to the conversation, adapt to the way the other person is communicating with you. Try to find this balance. I think this is the thing that the ingredients that I've learned from communication psychology.
Next question, another one about communication, but this time to stakeholders. Could you tell us how you effectively convince your stakeholders or influence design strategy with your research findings? I know you mentioned this was one of the toughest aspects about your role, but do you have any tips for our viewers?
I think that this is also something that is popping up over and over again during my interview, but I would say adapt. So there are times where you don't have time, or the stakeholder does not have time to prepare to read a full report. And so you have to prepare a quick and dirty bullet point sum up of what you found. Some other time, and this is my favorite one, is when you have time to really work on the insight you have generated. That is not just handling the document, okay? Like, hey, those are the thing, do what you want. It is about using those insights together with the decision makers and the developers and engineers and those who are working on a product to ideate with them. So brainstorming and workshops based on the insight I've pulled out of the interviews or surveys. This is not just about make it playful and make it funny, but is the way to better engage the stakeholders in the work you have done. Okay, because we'll know if you do a 30-minute presentation where you just read out PowerPoint slides, is not that effective and you might lose a lot of attention. So there are many techniques out there that you can use on how to transform your insight into stimuli for a brainstorming or an ideation session.
Yeah, you mentioned in previous answers as well that the journey of a UX researcher is an exciting one because you're always not just iterating on new ways to solve problems for clients, but also how to better present internally. So that's awesome. All right, just a couple more questions. Next one would be, as a UX researcher, you always have to be the seer of the bigger picture for users in order to interpret their needs to guide design. Oftentimes, users will fail to put into words what they really want, as I've seen many a time through a lot of surveys we've conducted. So what are some tips on properly interpreting data?
This is happening quite some time, quite often. And I would say that we are in a privileged position as researchers where we know we have a lot of information on the user experience and on the business side of it. So the business needs, business objective, and what the business can and cannot do. So many times the point is that take everything the user is telling you like a treasure, okay? bring into the table, but then try to interpret what their need mean. So we have, I cannot give you a specific example for obvious reasons, but a lot of users, let's make a generic one. A lot of users would like to have a more effective support agent that replies faster, people dedicated to them that is there 24/7 to solve the problem. And this is fair. This is what they feel they need, because they always have the bad experience, the bad side of it. Okay, agent not responding, chat never opening. We on the business side knows that what they want is a fast solution to a problem they're experiencing. We know that we could, for example, automatize this part of support. So giving the possibility of interacting with a chatbot that is always there and knows how to solve specific problems. So I would say a user would never told you, please give me a chatbot to solve the problem. They say, I want a faster solution. And in my mind, the only way is talking to an agent. Okay. So take this insight, and then when bringing it to the business, understand what can you do with that. So what is the root need? What I always say to my coworker is, please don't recommend final solution. Okay. Communicate what is the user need and what do they want, and let work together with the business to decide how to get there.
Thanks. Makes a lot of sense, because in the end, there are probably, like you said, I'm using an analogy of how when you studied UX back in the day, a lot of study paths maybe weren't invented yet. So same with solutions. If you bias things to what you think is the best solution, maybe there are other solutions that are just being invented or that you may not know about.
I don't agree with the user do not know what they want. They know what they know what they need. They might not know the way of getting there.
Good point. Yeah, that's something. I was watching a talk recently, probably by Don Norman, and who was talking about how sometimes, we may know what we need, but we don't know how to put it into words, because not all of us are blessed with, I guess, knowing how to put things into words. Great. So I know time is running a bit short, so I'll end with a quote by Frank Camero. What's good for the audience becomes unsustainable for the creatives unless those platforms somehow remain altruistic. So I wanted to discuss this a bit and wanted to know what you thought about the attention economy and a UX researcher's role in its future.
So I would say that nowadays, and it will be that important and more in the future, is that attention is like a currency right now. So it's really the thing that you're trying to get from the user as the final objective. So for example, advertisement on a web page or on a social network. And this is how those platforms are monetizing the user interaction they're generating. The thing is that the bad side of the user is that many of those content are not of their interest or not direct interest, or they think they're bothering or they're blocking what they're trying to do with the service. And I don't want to be super naive and say like advertisement are super bad, but they should remove it. I mean, this is the way of making money for those realities. And it sometimes, not very often, but they also can inspire or motivate or generate some interest in the final user. So I don't condemn advertisement 100%. It's true that there is a way of doing it that is not as bad for the user experience, okay? And I think that we haven't still find a sweet spot on how to do that. And so would be one of the objectives of UX research, okay? So to communicate to the business that really wants to make money out of it, how to do it in a way that is still providing a good experience with your product. Now, for example, what they're doing, YouTube or Spotify, is giving you a possibility to choose between you want to be a free user, not paying anything, but you get the advertisement, you want to get rid of it, pay a small fee per month. Okay, I still don't believe that this is the perfect solution. I cannot tell right now what would be the perfect solution, but I think that we are getting there, and UX research will definitely help companies to achieve this sweet spot of competing for the user attention without breaking or jamming the user experience.
Thank you. I agree. And thanks so much for speaking with me and sharing your passion for UX with our audience. I'm sure they learned a lot as much as I did.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure of mine.